Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Bolling, along with Eboni K. Williams and Kat Timpf. We are the Fox News specialists. The left and the mainstream media are in a frenzy following reports that President Trump's eldest son, Donald Trump Jr., met with a Kremlin-connected lawyer in June of last year. Trump Jr. had originally said the meeting was about adoption law issues between the U.S. and Russia, and now he's adding that he accepted the meeting due to promises of possible dirt on Hillary Clinton. Trump Jr. tweeted out sarcastically, quote, "Obviously, I'm the first person on a campaign to ever take a meeting to hear info about an opponent. Went nowhere but had to listen." The White House also commenting on the meeting just a short time ago.
Don Jr. took a very short meeting from which there was absolutely no follow-up. The only thing I see inappropriate about the meeting was the people that leaked the information on the meeting after it was voluntarily disclosed. I would certainly say Don Jr. did not collude with anybody to influence the election.
And the White House added further, President Trump found out about the meeting in just the last couple of days. Now, Eboni, more fake news, more over-the-top outrage, fake outrage by the mainstream media. So what? Donald Trump Jr. met with someone. He didn't even know the name of the person he was meeting with. It was arranged. And how many times do you think Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton arranged a meeting with a foreign government, maybe to squeeze a donation out of them once or twice?
Well, more than that, Eric, I mean, who doesn't love opposition research when you're running a campaign? So there's no there with the meeting. I think the issue, Eric, becomes the denial. But even that, I agree with you, much overreaction from those opposed to it.
What do you think, Kat?
Yeah, I think that it doesn't look good. It's not a positive thing, but the people are acting like this is some sort of smoking gun, which really it isn't. It's just more smoke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you watch the mainstream media, they're going wall to wall with this. Ooh. But let's meet today's specialist. She's the spokesperson for America First policies and a former national spokesperson for the Trump presidential campaign and a member of the Texas Tea Party Caucus Advisory Board. And she specializes in all things political. Katrina Pierson is here. And she's the executive in residence at American University's School of Public Affairs, a contributor at the Washington Examiner, and the former Ohio State Senate Minority Leader. And she specializes in baking a great pie. Capri, Cafaro is here as well. So it's been a little bit since the left has had a Russia-Trump story to get worked up about. So naturally, they've dialed up the hysteria with this Donald Trump Jr. fake news. Listen.
This is unacceptable. This borders on treason. If it is not itself treason, depending on whether the New York Times story is true. But this is a very, very serious situation. We should not treat this lightly.
This, in effect, is everything that people have been looking for. This is not only devastating to their narrative, I think it's also potentially incriminating.
Whoever is helping the New York Times with these stories seems to be doing it in a way to inflict maximum damage on at least Donald Trump Jr. Even if you accept his Sunday version, ask no questions, have no suspicions, he's in a world of hurt.
World of hurt, Katrina. Treason, maximum damage. What in the heck happened? What did he do?
I'm sorry. Are we supposed to be taking that seriously? I mean, here, let's put this in context. We are talking about a meeting that was disclosed by a White House official. And it's a story because someone who isn't a White House official and was not required to disclose it didn't. What am I missing?
I don't know. What are we missing? What do you think?
Look, I mean, here's what I think is important to recognize. Yeah, as Kat said, I mean, is this bad optics? Sure. Does it kind of try to play into some larger narrative that people want to stir the pot about Russia and Trump and some kind of collusion? Yes, on its face. But here's what I want people to remember. And I say this as a Democrat. Donald Trump Jr. is a business person. And I think he approached this meeting with whoever this Russian person was, utilizing the rules of engagement of business. You want to figure out how you beat the competition, right? So he wanted to figure out how to beat the competition. Now, the rules of engagement in politics are different. And they're learning that on the job, and they're learning that the hard way. Would I have taken that meeting? Probably not. But I understand, from his perspective, approaching it through the lens of business and, competitiveness. They're not used to the rules of politics.
No, that's not it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Don Jr. didn't know what was going on, because he did. There was someone who said, hey, we'd like to meet with you during the campaign.
I'm not suggesting that either.
And that's all he did. This wasn't even in a business context. This was talking to someone that says, I have information. So what the media is suggesting now is that everyone that meets with anyone a part of a political campaign needs an FBI background check. It's absolutely absurd.
It's because this lawyer, the FBI know who she is. She's a little bit shady, so if it doesn't look good when we've had all of this narrative building up over and over again, for him to have had that meeting 2 weeks after clinching the nomination, for this. People saying it's some sort of crime against the state, I think that's pretty extreme.
That is extreme.
It doesn't look good.
To your point, here's a Politico headline. Politico, Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfired, and that was in response to a Ukrainian group trying to get with Hillary Clinton to reveal dirt, Katrina, on Donald Trump. And it backfired. It didn't work. So this happens all the time.
Well, and I think, look, I think I'm the only person on this panel that actually has been elected to office who has run a campaign. And there's no question that, obtaining opposition research is something that occurs. I think that, the question that people are raising is, do you engage in that kind of conversation with a foreign national? And what I'm saying is that while obviously Donald Trump Jr. is not engaging this individual for the purposes of a business engagement, I'm not saying that there was some profit to be involved. I think he took it because, he admitted, look, she said she might have some stuff on Hillary. I want to know how to beat the competition. I'm going to meet this person.
I run a campaign, Eric.
Let me just bring Eboni in here. Rob Goldstone is the guy who arranged the meeting. He says he was in the meeting. He said, yeah, there are very few general remarks about campaign funding. And then they moved on to what the meeting was also supposed to be about, and that was human rights violations on the part of the Russians.
I got to tell you, Eric, I don't even see what's so bad about the optics. That's just me. It looks like a standard, ordinary political business, however you want to categorize it, seeking opposition research. Maybe he got something, he says he didn't, whatever. Even if he did, I still fail to see what
He's not a government employee.
Deal is. Yeah, who cares? If someone said they can have information to help my mom get into office, I'm going to go listen too, quite frankly.
Kat, I think Reince Priebus called it a nothing burger on the weekend. I have a real problem with this. This is an insult to nothing burgers. Nothing Caesar salad.
Look, I have a little bit different view than you do in the fact that I understand why people would find this interesting. Because of who she is, because of the timing of it, and because of this narrative that's been going on, I don't think it was a smart decision for him to have done so, but the way that it has been blown up as if this is what we've all been looking for,
that's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. That's absolutely
I agree with Kat.
You're saying it wasn't a smart thing for him to have done, but back in June of last year, there really wasn't this big narrative out there, right?
Exactly.
That all of this Russian collusion, all this talk was going on. So I think in hindsight, perhaps he felt like it was on the
I just think if somebody who is like that lawyer in her position was saying that she had information about someone who was an official in the United States government, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and they had information on her, my first thought would be, oh, the country. Well, how do they know these things that we don't know? I would think a little bit about this right being a Russian official.
But having run a campaign, this definitely does happen all the time. I mean, that's part of running a campaign, is finding out opposition on your candidate.
And I think no one is disputing that.
Katrina, hold on, Katrina, let's focus in on that for a second. Do you remember what one of the big things that came out since the election was this dossier, this Russian dossier that was put together. Now this Fusion GPS. Can you tie this up for us? I'm trying to figure this out. Fusion GPS was the group that was hired to go ahead and go forward and hire Christopher Steele, a British national, to dig up information on Donald Trump, negative information on Donald Trump. Somehow the same Fusion GPS is somewhat tied to this woman, this Natalie Veselnitskaya.
Yes, not only that, but the intentions of this meeting is what is really the problem here. And her connections to this shady group and others, now it makes us look back and say, oh, well, this was a bad intention by this individual. But this wasn't Donald Trump Jr.'s fault or even the president's fault. If they say we want to have a meeting for X and then come in with a personal motivation of Y, then we have to look back at that and question those individuals. Unfortunately, with this, this is just a part of a bigger hoax. You know, as you were mentioning, this was not the context before in June. However, John Podesta did have prior connections to the Russians. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton did have connections to Russia and their governments, but yet we're not talking about that. And those are the real issues there.
Yeah, two wrongs don't make a right. That's not right.
There's nothing wrong here. Right. There was nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong.
There are no laws that were broken.
Well, and I'm not disputing that either. I'm not disputing that either.
I turn on the other cable networks to see what they're talking about, and they're going wall to wall. We just heard treason, max damage going down.
And you know what? And there are real issues in America. I come from Ohio. I served 10 years in the Ohio Senate. Real issues are happening, and unfortunately, we're all spinning like top cops talking about this when real work needs to be done for this country.
I'll tell you this too, Eric. When you hear people tossing out words like treason and what's illegal, it makes you wonder if these people understand the elements of treason and what's required to actually be illegal, because that really takes the air out of their tires. And I would also say this, for those that are just in a resistance mode, that their goal is to take down the president, I think you have every right to do that. But this type of overreaction undermines that effort tremendously.
This political article that I point out, Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. It didn't backfire in this, Katrina. What it did end up coming of that, those are Ukrainian efforts where Paul Manafort, senior, or I think he was campaign manager at the time of the Trump administration campaign, had to resign.
Well, and he did, and for good reason. There were a lot of bad optics around that time. But again, we have to remember why we're even having this discussion, Eric. The losing team claimed that the DNC server was hacked and that information was delivered to WikiLeaks. There is no proof, no evidence whatsoever. Even the FBI admits we never looked at the hardware, but yet this is where this stemmed from. Where is Debbie Wasserman Schultz? Where's her subpoena? Where is the evidence? Let's look at that hardware and prove whether this happened or not, because if it didn't, then we have a very serious problem, because millions of tax dollars are being spent on, like the president says, a hoax.
Katrina, you're the first person in a very long time that I've actually heard request to see Debbie Wasserman Schultz in any capacity.
I would like to see that.
Bring it, Eboni.
I would like to see the things too. A lot of things that went down with the Dem primaries. Not cool what they did to Bernie Sanders. I completely agree. But when you look at this story, I think that I'm not surprised that we're talking about it. I think that the concern that people have is they think that it shows a willingness of Trump people to work with Russia to win. And I guess in a very broad sense, sort of, but this isn't an actual government official. She's connected, and this is an actual campaign of it. This is his son. So it's not perfect. And if saying that this is exactly what we've been looking for is a dumb thing to say, and it's not even illegal.
It's just an overreach. Actually, Kat, because that's the problem. When you take a narrative and you want facts to fit, guess what? The facts have to fit. When the facts don't fit perfectly into the narrative, now you've undermined the narrative itself, and that's kind of the problem.
I see the problems with it, but at this point, every single little thing or something that might look bad or might have been not the smartest thing is being brought up as a crime against our country. People are going to stop listening.
Do you think they would eventually, at some point, say, you know, every one of these stories, they blow it up on mainstream media,
and that hurts us. That hurts the Democratic narrative.
Comes slowly out of the balloon.
Because you can only cry wolf so many times.
Let's wait for another one, see if we can tie someone from Trump to someone from Russia.
I suggest everybody goes back to governing and stop trying to play gotcha games.
Agreed.
But my 2 cents.
That'd be beautiful.
All right,
Imagine
there. President Trump says it's now time to move forward with and work constructively with Russia over global crises. Is it possible amid the left and mainstream media's Russia fever? Can they do that? Don't go away.
In the wake of his G20 sit-down with Vladimir Putin, President Trump is attempting to jumpstart ties with Russia. The president tweeting, quote, "I strongly pressed Putin twice about Russian meddling in our election. He vehemently denied it. I've already given my opinion. We negotiated a ceasefire in parts of Syria, which will save lives. Now it is time to move forward in working constructively with Russia." President Trump revealed a proposed joint cybersecurity unit with Russia, but after getting bipartisan criticism, has followed up by tweeting, "The fact that President Putin and I discussed a cybersecurity unit doesn't mean I think it can happen. It can't, but a ceasefire can and did." Okay.
Whoops.
Okay. So why the first tweet then, Katrina? Any idea why the first tweet about talking about the proposed cybersecurity unit and saying it will guard us against hacking? Because that suggests that it was actually set in place, using will instead of would.
Well, I think by now, people should understand that the president speaks his mind through Twitter, number one. Number two, there's also a blank slate in the world for the United States and some of these other countries. We're looking at the disaster in Russia because of the Obama administration, because of Hillary Clinton's failed reset. President Obama didn't do anything when Russia essentially was moving forward. And so now the president has an opportunity to sort of reset those negotiations and go into this with a positive influence. And there's no question that there is a world leader that doesn't believe that Donald Trump is serious about putting Americans first and making America great again. So this idea that he wanted to maybe work together to solve a problem, you know, keep your friends close but your enemies closer. He is looking for all areas to come together and work with these countries. Even though we're talking about cybersecurity, but Kat,
I disagree. I disagree.
But you can't say
try to tell me one. Try to tell me one way that could work where the people who are accused of hacking us, that our intelligence agencies have found to have hacked our elections, how we're going to work with them to stop someone from helping our elections. I mean, I spent a really hard time thinking about how that could possibly work. And I got to tell you, I got nothing. Maybe I'm an idiot, or maybe that's an idiotic idea.
Well, no, you can't say, well, the president needs to address hacking with Russia, but then say, well, don't address cybersecurity.
No, but there's two different things. There's two different issues.
She's asking a question about why the president said what he said. I'm just trying to explain why he said what he said. Just because
Nobody
you work
does
together.
That better than you, by the way, Katrina.
Thank you. Amen. Just because he says he wants to work towards a positive goal with a country who may be engaging in illicit activities doesn't mean that he's going to put it all out on the table. He'll tell you himself. I don't tell you what I'm going to do and when I'm going to do it. At the same time, it's not just Russia. So what do? Not work with anyone?
No, but cybersecurity is very specific.
Can I just also add
of all the things he could have said we're working on him with, he's going to say that one.
So
was it
are we assuming that Russia is better at hacking than we are? Are we going to
Yes, but are they going to give up? Is the guy who was the former KGB agent going to give up his state secrets?
Capri, if I say to you, let's work on this deal together, we're going to make the assumption that Russia's better at beating us at the game than we are at them. It's not. Maybe there's a strategy to bring Russia in so that we can hack them.
But here's the thing: Vladimir Putin, and I think everybody can agree with this, is one of the slipperiest world leaders in a generation. I mean, I did my master's thesis on sustainable democratization in the former Soviet republics through educational exchange programs between the United States and Russia. And I can tell you this.
That doesn't make them better at it than
I didn't say that.
That doesn't make their intel department better than ours.
No one is
sure
saying
that.
No.
You're assuming that because...
No, Eric.
Allow me to
Absolutely
finish the
not.
thought. You're saying that, assuming that Donald Trump wants to, I don't know, create some sort of cybersecurity partnership with Russia, that they're going to somehow infiltrate us, and we're not going to infiltrate them?
I don't think that that's the case. And fair enough.
Well, then why not do it?
If they want to go ahead and engage, why even open up that can of worms? Right. I mean, why open up that can of worms? Yes, maybe we can hack them, but why give them an opportunity to hack us?
If somebody breaks into my house, I'm not going to be like, all right, you broke into my house, come over and help me figure out how to secure it. That makes no sense.
He is a Russian nationalist beyond Russian nationalists of the levels of Lenin.
In our CIA, our intel departments, NSA, CIA.
And I think,
let's get Eboni in here.
Far more complicated.
Sorry. The block is hot on this one. Okay, let me say this one. I hear Eric and Capri basically giving an analysis of who can get the better of who. That's essentially what this comes down to. If we take Donald Trump at his word with the tweet, President Trump at his word, and he talks about something that's very highly strategic, which I hear Katrina and Eric saying, or as Kat and Capri are saying, maybe just a little less than smart to trust any intentionality behind Vladimir Putin, then it becomes a question of who can get the better of who. Now, I'm going to take a position that I'm going to suspect that my two friends here on either side of me are not going to appreciate. I don't know that I believe President Trump really sees Vladimir Putin as something to be not worked with in this way. And I think that the president has a level of a bit of admiration for the leadership of Vladimir Putin. I think we know that based on some of the things said on the campaign trail, and that concerns me. It does concern me that I think the president likes the leadership style of Vladimir Putin, and I think that there's a little bit of a little too positive, a little too rosy.
Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
I would believe it. I think that's a smart strategy. I don't know if I buy that with President Trump and Putin. I think that perhaps there's a little bit more of an admiration going on with Putin's leadership style, and it does concern me.
I think maybe there's a little bit more undue credit given to Vladimir Putin and Russian capabilities than they may deserve. I think we are far more competent in the intel department.
They still hacked us
in those ways.
But it's not just Russia.
Do we know that we haven't hacked them? We know that we haven't been.
And we obviously tapped, even Angela Merkel. We certainly have capabilities.
Of course we
and
do.
I don't think that anyone is disputing that we have some of the best intelligence and technological capabilities in the world. I'll say the best. Absolutely.
You know what? Then all these bilateral agreements are a win for us.
Well, it's not even a bilateral agreement. There's no agreement.
But Eric,
it's a discussion.
Fair enough.
It's a discussion that Putin suggested.
If I can see the point that we're the best, does that eliminate the risk, though, of getting into bed with this?
No, nor does it eliminate the risk on their side, too. Maybe
it's a mutual risk.
Maybe it increases the risk, but it certainly opens the opportunity window high.
All right, well,
they're yelling at us.
Straight ahead, we got so much more show, guys. Straight ahead, President Trump is accusing James Comey of breaking the law after a new report says Comey's personal memos contain classified information. We'll be right back.
And now my bitter hands shake beneath the clouds. Oh, what was everything? All the pictures said, all
James Comey facing serious questions after a stunning new report from the Hill newspaper. Now, it details that Comey made 7 memos describing his interactions with President Trump, and after a review by officials, 4 of them appear to contain classified info. Now, Comey's argued that the memos are, quote, personal, but the FBI is describing them as government documents. So that's raising the possibility that Comey violated FBI protocols. President Trump quickly jumping on the report, tweeting today, quote, James Comey leaked classified information to the media. That is so illegal. Now, the report does not state that the memo Comey had a friend describe to the New York Times contained actual classified info, but earlier today, Jason Chaffetz, the former head of the House Oversight Committee, described Comey's caginess after the existence of the memo became public knowledge.
After that was revealed, I actually was able to get on the phone with Director Comey, and he's a very jovial, open person on the phone. But when I asked him about the disposition of those emails, where are these documents, he got silent. He said he wouldn't talk about it. He wouldn't tell me where they were. And it really raised a lot of eyebrows as I went back and talked to the staff and other members and said, look, he's not going to give us up easily.
Okay, by the way, Jason Chaffetz will be one of our specialists on Wednesday. Eric, okay, so let's go over some basic facts again. There were 9 meetings between James Comey and President Trump, 7 memos taken, Comey going and writing down his notes. 4 of them we know contained classified information, but we don't necessarily know that one of those 4 was the one leaked to the professor.
And again, Catherine Herridge outlined this afternoon. I think it's very important to note. Okay, so Comey feels on his own admission that this was such important information that from his notes that the public needed it, so he leaks it to a professor who leaks it to the New York Times. Now, the professor says these weren't classified documents because they weren't stamped classified. That's what he says. Who knows if they were or weren't? I'll take his word for it. But he's not the guy who dictates whether that's classified or not.
No, he's not.
There are groups that decide, where our intel department should decide whether or not James Comey's words were classified or not, that he took notes for.
Right.
James Comey may have broken the law. I'm not sure, but whatever it is, if you think it's okay to leak classified or at least intel from inside meetings with the president of the United States, I'm going to tell you it's outrageous and becoming very dangerous.
Okay, let's go with you, Capri, on this one. So let's break it down. Also, 2 different things we're talking about. One is breaking FBI protocol,
and the other is breaking the law.
So perhaps the president may be getting those you know, a little mixed up there. Right. But we don't know. But what we do know is this. We know that Comey used specific words when he was giving his testimony.
Right.
He specifically said an unclassified memo.
Right. And he said that he wrote that memo that he provided to his friend at Columbia University Law School, that he wrote it in such a way that it could be unclassified and shared. You know, obviously, the problem is that there's so many people involved in this process. I mean, Jim Comey has been all over the board, you know, starting all the way back from last summer. And so, you know, his veracity is somewhat questionable. So I think that at this point, if there is smoke and fire here, we don't know if any illegal activity has actually occurred. It's somewhat clear that the FBI protocol has been breached in some manner. But if there is anything, I mean, again, 2 wrongs don't make a right, as my grandma would always say. If there is something here, and there's obviously enough to look into, then, you know, Jim Comey deserves to have some kind of investigation by Congress or someone else to at least get to the bottom of whether or not that memo really did include classified information.
Another thing we know for sure is that it wasn't his personal property, right? What we know is that when you write that memo, it absolutely belongs to the government at that point.
Well, I think that's where the illegal aspect does come from. I mean, he did violate FBI protocol. There was no sign-off on releasing that information. This was not a Dear Diary journal at the end of the day.
And
he said his extent
is not necessarily a statutory breach, right, in the legal sense?
Maybe not in the legal sense that we know of yet, but we also don't know what the president knows, and we have to remember that. as well. But this also goes to show why he probably didn't think Hillary Clinton should have been indicted, because he was doing the same thing. Look, in my opinion, what this looks like is you have arguably one of the most, if not the most powerful bureaucrat in this country, who was essentially creating a file on high-powered politicians, possibly for an insurance policy. And then he goes to the media and he leaks this information with the intention on undermining the President of the United States.
You mean by the appointment of Mueller? That's the
oh, absolutely. He wanted to undermine the president and give out this illusion that the president was doing something wrong in a basic discussion. One could look at that and ask, the information that did come out, we don't know. But there were also leaks prior to this coming from the FBI that I think we should also look at. His fingerprints
Okay,
all over it.
listen, the fact that some of these memos were classified does not mean the ones that you leaked had the classified information, as you said, Eboni. And I think that it's very important to know that before anybody goes nuts with any sort of feeling, any type of way about this. I don't know why the president would have tweeted that. I do love the phrase "so illegal," however, just on a personal level.
Extra illegal.
It's super duper totally illegal. But I think that he should have waited, in my opinion, before, because we don't know that he leaked classified information. He also, hold on, Eric, let me finish.
Yep.
The one thing he said about it is that he wrote it, as you mentioned, in a way to avoid having any classified information in it. That's the only indication we have so far.
Okay, and we're supposed to now believe that all the information that Comey gave to this professor, none of it was absolutely classified. We don't really know that.
I'm
the
saying
stuff, hold on, the stuff that the professor leaked to the New York Times may or may not have been, certainly wasn't stamped classified. It may or may not have been classified. That's up for debate.
Yeah, I'm on team wait and see.
But we don't also know what else. What is every? Am I crazy to think that the FBI director leaking information to a professor who's going to further leak it to the New York Times, even though maybe technically legal, is somehow okay now?
No,
I think everybody's
floating right
saying
now.
that.
No,
Everyone's
I think
that it goes
James
against
Comey's
protocol.
credibility really went out the window last summer when, in my professional opinion as an attorney, he very much politicized what should be an apolitical office. That's our FBI. And I think it's really been downhill from there for Jim Comey. Congress is back from recess, and President Trump is turning up the pressure on the Senate to get that health care deal done before the August recess. But can Mitch McConnell get his fellow Republicans on board? Stay with us.
Been sitting here, can't get you off my mind. Try my best to be a man and be strong. I drove myself insane, wishing I could touch your face.
Welcome back to the Fox News Specialists. Our specialists today are Katrina Pierson and Capri Cafaro. Let's continue the conversation. Congress is back, and the race is on to resuscitate the Senate's health care bill before the August recess. President Trump chiding his fellow Republicans on Twitter today, saying, quote, "I cannot imagine that Congress would dare to leave Washington without a beautiful new health care bill fully approved and ready to go." That comes after some Senate Republicans voiced deep skepticism about the bill's future over the weekend.
My view is it's probably going to be dead, but I've been wrong. I thought I'd be president of the United States, but I think I fear that it's going to fail, and then we should convene a Republican conference. What are we going to do?
But earlier today, Vice President Mike Pence struck a much more optimistic tone.
This president, this administration promised the American people that we would repeal and replace Obamacare. And the Senate now is literally within weeks of being able to deliver on that promise to the American people. The legislation before the Senate, for which there is not yet agreement, but we are close. We are very close. We can get it done, and I believe with all my heart we will get it done.
Capri, we were talking about this in the green room a little bit. How are these conversations even working towards compromise when you need votes from two separate groups of people who want opposite things? The super conservatives say it goes too far, it's too intrusive, and then the more moderates say it doesn't go far enough. How do you have a compromise like that?
It's going to be incredibly difficult. I mean, they did manage to pull it off by the hair of their chinny chin chin in the House, but we're dealing with very vocal, very powerful senators in the United States Senate, and you have the Rand Pauls of the world and some of the more conservatives that absolutely want to say we need to repeal and replace. There are others like Rob Portman, like Sherry Moore Capito of West Virginia, the more moderates that are concerned that this is not going to serve their constituents well, because not only do you have issues of pre-existing conditions not being dealt with, but you also have issues of Medicaid being on the chopping block as well. So how you move one lever, you get these people, and then you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So it's going to be very, very difficult for them to get done. And I know Ted Cruz has presented a potential compromise that says, you know, you can have a slimmer plan on the health insurance exchange to reduce costs, which is fine. But frankly, that again doesn't address the issue of higher premiums for those with pre-existing conditions. So we can't legislate and solve all the world's problems in 30 seconds.
Eric,
sorry, guys.
This is a very embarrassing thing. Everybody that was a Republican ran off of Obamacare is bad. We need to vote us in so you can fix it. People said, okay, voted you in. Okay, well, we don't know how to fix it, though. We agree with you that it needs to be fixed. I mean, that's humiliating.
There was some good news in that first soundbite. John McCain, for the first time in 20 years, is right. I think it is going to be dead. I don't think it's going to pass. Congratulations.
We're all agreeing, Eric.
Yeah.
And I will agree, and we've been saying this for the better part of 2 months now here, that this bill, the House bill didn't, nor this bill hasn't addressed the skyrocketing cost of health care, health insurance. And I don't know why they didn't. Honestly, 7.5 years, you got a lot of time to figure out how to fix it. Some of the things that we complained about as Republicans, tort reform, selling across state lines competitively, prescription drug prices, and choices aren't in this bill. And I can only think that maybe there's some corruption, cronyism going on in the D.C. swamp.
Sounds like some swamp.
And honestly, the leadership on both the House and the Senate side have failed Donald Trump.
Consistently at this point. But, you know, I'll take it a step further than Vice President Pence, because, yes, the president did campaign on repealing and replace. So, as you've mentioned, the conservatives and the moderates are having a disagreement. Well, that's too bad. They're both going to have to get over themselves, because one of the things that I think is missing from the discussion is Republicans think that they won in November, and they didn't. Donald Trump won in November, and that is very different from what we're discussing today. So if they can't come together in this 25th hour and come up with something, it's a problem. And that's why America First Policies is really pushing this issue, because we have to get to a conference if we're going to do anything. This vote isn't going to be anything in solid, and we've got to have that hard
Republicans did win on repeal, replace Obamacare, right, Eboni? Well, a big part of it.
Conservatives and moderates lost.
Right. I was going to say, I think what Katrina is saying, though, Kat, is that essentially they have leadership because they rode the coattails of Donald J. Trump in November. But 2 considerations here. One is passing it. So I hear you, Katrina. They need to get over themselves and pass it. But they also need to pass something that people are going to like.
That's right.
People feel like addresses the primary problems in Obamacare, those skyrocketing premiums, because otherwise, then politically, they're going to have the same problem the Democrats had in 2010, which means they're going to have to live or die by the popularity of their health care reform.
Guess what? Democrats need to come to the table, too. I'll go that. We all have to govern together. Democrats can't just be the party of no.
But do you think that they will, Capri?
No,
honestly?
but they should.
Okay.
I don't think
very quickly, I know, at one point, Ted Cruz floated the idea that wouldn't be bad. It might hurt politically a little bit. Let Obamacare as an option. Don't make it mandatory. And then offer a Republican alternative to Obamacare and let that thing implode by itself. Not a bad idea, really.
Well, it's
bad for people.
Well, yeah. Well, coming up, we'll see.
Republican option that's better.
Have to get it together at some point. All right, coming up, police officers uproar at a Bill de Blasio intensifying after the mayor's return from G20 protests in Germany. Don't go away.
New York City Mayor despicable Bill de Blasio unfortunately has returned home after attending the G20 protests in Germany over the weekend. De Blasio missed a Saturday vigil for assassinated New York police officer Miosotis Familia to tout his far leftist self to anarchist disruptors in Hamburg.
And so we, here in Hamburg, in New York City, in cities and towns across Germany, in cities and towns across America and across the world, we create the change at the grassroots. We lead the way.
Needless to say, de Blasio's behavior is not going well with many officers in the Big Apple.
We have a very anti-police atmosphere. We're not seeing any kind of leadership that comes out and explains that the facts that are out there are not true. The police are not your enemy.
Mayor de Blasio met with Officer Familia's family ahead of her wake this afternoon and this evening. But, Eboni, I wonder if de Blasio is being met with a warm welcome from the NYPD officers.
Well, I will tell you, we discussed it earlier on my radio show, Eric, and several officers called in and said that there was a plan to turn their backs, as has been done previously, as a show of how much they don't appreciate the mayor taking this type of position. And also, Eric, I hate to say it, but it feels a bit as if this officer who gave her life for the badge, her wake and her services were planned around the mayor's schedule. And that is a pretty disgusting sentiment.
Kat, I was up in Florida and South Carolina over the weekend. I had law enforcement officers coming to me from there thanking me because we hit de Blasio pretty hard on Friday.
I know.
I was there.
Yeah, and law enforcement doesn't like de Blasio.
No, and it's not hard to see why not. And I wouldn't be surprised, Eboni, even before you said that, if they do the turning of the backs thing again. And if he acts like a victim over that, like, oh, they're being mean to me, then I'm going to laugh in his face and tell him to shut up. Because you can't behave that way and show that it's such a low priority to you and then be surprised. It's not just the NYPD, it's your NYPD. If you're the mayor, you're supposed to lead it. So even if you have problems with the NYPD, you're not just some dude. You're the one guy that has the most power to actually make changes if you need fit. But you have to engage. You can't run away.
And Katrina, the I don't know, the juxtaposition of Donald Trump over there in the same place promoting Western values and Bill de Blasio over there trashing Western values.
Well, my heart breaks for Officer Familia's family. Words can't describe how disgusted that I was when I heard about this, particularly knowing someone like a leader in Donald Trump who really puts law enforcement on a pedestal, because at the end of the day, when something goes wrong, who do you call? And it's really unfortunate that in his own city that he opted to go on a trip, taxpayer dollars maybe? No, not taxpayer dollars. But certainly there were law enforcement protecting the mayors. Exactly. That's my point. And as Eboni said, that this was scheduled around his schedule. And so it's really unfortunate that, thank God I'm a Texas resident, that this is happening. But New York has an opportunity now to change the leadership. And I think that's what we should be talking about.
Unfortunately, the mayor is probably just as popular in New York that he was before he went on this Hamburg trip.
He's not particularly popular as far as I can tell. I mean, even with Democrats and progressives, they think that he's not liberal enough. The conservatives don't like him. And Bill de Blasio is not the most popular guy around. And, you know, as a Democrat, I'm disgusted by the fact that, number one, Bill de Blasio went into the midst of anarchist protesters when he has a job to do here at home. And number two, that we're politicizing the death of a law enforcement officer, which is wrong. I'm not saying we. I'm saying collectively the fact that things are being scheduled around the mayor. This is a solemn occasion. I have a good friend who's the state senator for the Bronx. He was there on the scene, Gustavo Rivera, and unfortunately, our mayor was not.
Yeah,
that's leadership.
Yep, that is leadership. All right, thank you. We'll leave it right there. When we circle back, we're going to circle back with our specialists, Katrina Pierson and Capri Cafaro.
So before we circle back with our specialists, Katrina Pierson and Capri Cafaro, Eric, you have to debrief us on your book tour this past week, and I heard you were in my neck of the woods.
I was all over the South. I'm just going to tell you very quickly. Let me tell you something. America adores Fox. I had so many people coming up to me saying, listen, we put Fox on from the time we wake up through the time we go to bed. Now, that first picture right there is the Villages in Central Florida. Amazing crowd. They're just loving the show as well. And here's the Vero Beach Book Club. Just packed out this place. It was insane. People coming up. They love the show. They love Fox. This is my good friend, Greg Mosing. I had to put him in there. He traveled through. We did 8 stops in 2 days, 48 hours. Insane. Check this one out. There was over 600 people in a bookstore in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Next picture. These ladies are the Republican ladies of South Carolina. Yes. They are Trump fans across the board. They love Trump. They love Fox. They love the specialists. And hold on this picture just for 1 second. This little girl brought tears to my eyes. We're in Florida. We're in Panama City, Florida, and she wouldn't let go of that book. She was just so happy to be part of the Fox experience. It was just heartwarming.
She wants to drain the swamp, Eric. Congratulations.
It was amazing.
That's awesome. Congratulations, A. So, Katrina, you want to tell us about your call to action around the Russia investigation.
Absolutely. It's very clear that Russia is a hoax. President Obama himself, prior to the election, said that it's impossible to rig the United States elections. There's too many people. It's decentralized, et cetera, et cetera. I believe him. And he did nothing when Russia was attempting to hack. The call to action are for those Republican voters in the districts where these committee people sit. The president needs to call his new buddies, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, and say the investigation is over, because this is only happening because the Republicans are holding these meetings. It needs to end.
What about you? What do you think about Russia? I want to ask you, do you have a different view? I know in Ohio, do people talk about it a lot, or is it only in New York here people talk?
You know, honestly, the people in Ohio, yeah, you know, they may say a thing or two about, like, what is all this Russia stuff? But at the end of the day, the people in Ohio, and frankly, the people outside of the coast, care about the economy. They care about whether or not they can feed their family, whether or not they're going to keep their job, and, you know, whether or not their kids are going to be able to go to school, and whether or not they you know, can go to the doctor if they get sick. So, you know, inside the Beltway and on the coast, we get fixated on these issues that the media focuses on, when we really, again, whether it's the media or whether it's elected officials in Washington, we need to focus on what the people need, not what stirs the pot.
Time to govern. That's exactly right.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you to our Fox News specialists today, Katrina Pierson and Capri Cafaro. And thank you all for watching, and make sure you follow us on social media at Specialist FNC on both Twitter and Facebook. And remember, 5 o'clock will never be the same. Special reports up next.